This is Research Like a Pro, episode 34, Getting Organized One Paper at a Time. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the creators of the Amazon best-selling book, Research Like a Pro, a Genealogist's Guide. I'm Nicole, co-host of the podcast. Join Diana and me as we discuss how to stay organized, make progress in our research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go. Hello, everybody. This is Nicole Dyer. Welcome to the Research Like a Pro podcast today. Today, we're sharing our presentation from the Tucson Family History Fair called Getting Organized One Paper at a Time. Diana and I gave this keynote together, and we had a really fun time doing it. And we decided to record the audio just in case we could share it, and it turned out okay. So we're going to share that audio with you today. You can listen to the presentation, and you'll hear the audience interacting and laughing and whatnot. So we hope that you enjoy this episode. It's a little bit different, a little bit longer, and it has both of us kind of talking to the audience. So we hope you love it.
We probably give Diana and Nicole a hand and turn the time over.
Thanks. We're so happy to be here, and my mom came down for the weekend, so it was a bonus. I'm standing in front of this. I can't stand here.
Okay, we'll do this.
I'll stand here. You stand there.
This is tricky. We decided we're going to both stand up here the whole time so we can interrupt each other and have fun. So I just have to tell you a funny story to start off with. I remember to silence my phone, which is a good thing, because yesterday I was sitting in the airport and all of a sudden this really loud bagpipe music came on, and we were trying to watch some TV. You know how they have the TV screens. I'm thinking, who's got bagpipe music on? Oh, guess who it was? It was my phone that just automatically started playing Pandora. And so, yeah, it was kind of embarrassing. After 5 minutes, I'm thinking, this is coming from my backpack. Anyway, I have silenced my phone so we won't have any crazy bagpipes starting in the middle of our presentation today.
Good job. Thanks.
Yeah. So I'm going to open this up. Thank you so much for that welcome. We are really excited to be here, and it's fun to see some familiar faces, some of our friends, some of my friends that I've gotten to know through here in Tucson. So I'm going to start off with a quote. I gotta feel like you know what I'm doing here. Okay, I love this quote. First comes thought, then organization of that thought into ideas and plans, then transformation of those plans into reality. The beginning, as you will observe, is in your imagination, by Napoleon Hill. So as we are talking today about organization, I want you to think of that. Hopefully your head won't be exploding with ideas. Actually, hopefully your head will be exploding with ideas. That's good. That's why you're coming to this conference, right? But what I'm hoping is that some of the things we tell you will spark something in your brain that will help you to think what you can do to put into action a plan to get organized. I am assuming that all of you here are perfectly organized with everything, completely organized file folders and digital folders, right? Everybody ready? Okay. So that's why you're here. You're here to get some ideas and to learn. And confession, I am not completely organized. I still have file folders that need to be digitized. It's a process. So don't beat yourself up if you feel like you're, a total mess, because I guarantee your neighbor probably feels the same way. Okay, so let's talk about the suitcase. As Bob said, 6 years ago, I had moved to Utah and wanted to start doing more research. I'd been in Seattle, had little kids, I felt like I wanted to do this, but we didn't have the internet back then. It was harder. You had to physically go to an archive to research, and I didn't have that capability at that time. So I called my dad and I said, hey, Dad, I want to do some research. What can I do? And he said, you know what? I'm tired, and I can't use the computer. It gives me a headache. I'm going to give you all of it. I'm like, oh, great. This sounds so exciting. And he said, your mother and I are going to Hawaii. This was January. He's in Idaho. I'm in Utah. He says, meet us at the airport, and I'll just give you everything. And I'm thinking, oh, yay. So I had no idea what to expect. And he shows up with a suitcase, an old suitcase stuffed full of papers. And he took that home. It was like opening a treasure chest. I was just envisioning file folders perfectly organized and all this wonderful genealogy. Can you guess what was in that suitcase? It was just stuff full of papers. There were a few file folders with names on it, but the things inside the file folders didn't really correspond to the names on the folders. And I honestly had no idea what this stuff was. Luckily for Nicole and I, our stake had a family history fair just like this in Highland, And I think it was 2 weeks after I got the suitcase. It was so providential. And there were about 3 classes on organization. And these were all by great presenters, great ideas. And I chose the idea that worked the best for me, and I started organizing the papers. And so that is where a lot of the ideas that we're talking about today come from my story and my journey of trying to organize. And then it was so great because I had Nicole, and she just kind of stepped in, and I had the method figured out, and she followed in my footsteps. And now she teaches me stuff, so it's awesome.
Now she teaches me stuff. We work together. It's so fun to work together. So raise your hand if you have a box of family history papers or files at your house. Raise your hand if you have several boxes. Raise your hand if you have a whole room of boxes. We have so many people that tell us that they have rooms of boxes or a room full of papers and they don't know where to start. So I'm going to ask Diana about her process, and we're going to talk back and forth about the things that we've learned along the way. So what did you do? Where did you dedicate this project to? Did you do it all in your bedroom or?
So we had moved into this new house, and we actually had an office or a den space. And so I set up a big card table, and I pulled all the papers out, and I just left it set up because I still had 5 kids at home, age 8, let's see, how old Elizabeth was 7 to 16. We were in the middle of all of those things, scouts and dance lessons and piano, and I didn't have time to sit all day and work on this. I would have maybe an hour a day I could escape upstairs. I needed to keep it spread out. So I had a table, and the first thing I did was to make sense of the papers. So I divided it by families. This was my dad's stuff, so that made it easy. It was just the paternal line, and I took his 4 grandparents, and I made piles of their families. And sometimes when you do this, you have to have an unknown file because you might get a paper and you really have no idea how they're connected. And so it's okay to have an unknown file or stash. Now, I have consulted with people that have, my latest person that I worked with, she had 39 boxes of stuff, which may trump any of you, but man, that was a lot. And she was just so overwhelmed. But I told her, you can do the same thing. You can sort your boxes, mark on the boxes which family line this is. So it doesn't matter how large or how small the scope of your project, you can get started by just dividing it into basic groups of families. That's a good way to start.
Well, let's talk about what you do next, because you've got to have a system. So let's switch. Okay. I just want to make sure you can hear me. So the next thing you need to do is to have an electronic database, and this is so that you can have somewhere to put all of your information. So let's talk about some different options for that. So a lot of us might already be using the Family Search family tree, but we can't just rely on that because it is a collaborative tree that other people can change. So while we want to put our information there because we want to share and use that, we also need to have a copy of our own research that we control and that other people can't change because we don't want to lose any of the information we've found. So you can use an electronic database like Ancestry, which is online, because they do have private trees or public trees you can decide, so you can put information about living individuals and your deceased ancestors there, and you can easily save records, and it's a great tree building tool. So Ancestry is definitely a great option. It syncs with Family Search, so you can send information back and forth. However, and you can find DNA tests, but with Ancestry, we always say that it is a company that could close down or be purchased out, so you don't have 100% control over your data there. And what if you let your subscription lapse? You might not have access to your tree anymore. So even safer than an Ancestry tree is a desktop computer program. Who here uses Personal Ancestral File, Ancestral Quest, Roots Magic, something like that? Great, so you guys are on track for that. And if you haven't considered doing that yet, there are so many powerful features in these programs. And you can make great reports and research logs, and there's the ability to store that living information for your relatives. You can access it when you don't have internet access, if you go to a repository, or if you're researching when the power's out and your laptop has battery. You can publish and share your tree to a website or in other easier forms, and you have full control over your data. So we really recommend trying out a desktop program like this. So how do you choose? How did you decide? I mean, we started with PATH, Personal Ancestral Files, so.
So we started with PATH, and that was kind of the only option when we started. How many of you started with that personal ancestral file? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. It was great. It was such a fun way to start your program. And you might be thinking, why did you have to start new? Well, my dad gave me his disc, but guess what? It was one of those old floppy disks. It was so old my computer couldn't even read it. It couldn't even do anything with it. Which is a good lesson for us, to keep converting to the next technology so that our tree doesn't get lost. So everything that he had ever entered into that didn't matter. Luckily, I had family group sheets. Print does work.
Print less.
Print less. So we now use Ancestral Quest because at one of those family history fairs, the presenter said it had a collaborative mode. And so it works great because I can work on our tree in Utah, Nicole can work on it in Tucson. We check it in and out of a cloud-based program, and so we make changes and we both get the changes. That's why we chose that one. Now, I'm going to ask another question. Do all of you drive a maroon Chevy Suburban? Does anybody here drive one besides me? I'm probably the only one. I have the most unique car in the room. So buying or purchasing or using one of these programs is like buying a car. They all get you the same place. They're all going to do basically the same things, but there are just differences in how they look, how you work with them, how much they cost. And so when we're showing you some of these different things, just think about it as a car. When you go to buy a car, do you just walk into the lot and purchase the first one you see? You're like, oh, I like that black one right there. That's great. No, you look at reviews, you ask people about it, you do a test drive, you do your homework. And so it's the same way with these programs. Think of it as buying a car.
All right, so how do you choose? Well, we put together some of the most common programs and kind of put a little chart together to show you. So in the top row we have price. The price is very similar for Roots Magic, Ancestral Quest, and Legacy Family Tree. And then you see Family TreeMaker, which is a little bit pricier. The first three also have free trials, but Family TreeMaker doesn't. And as far as online tree integration, if you are set on integrating with Family Search, then most of these will work for you, except for Family TreeMaker. If you want to make sure that you can integrate with Ancestry online trees, then you need to choose either Family TreeMaker or Roots Magic. So you can see that a lot of the record searching integration is with all of them. They have links to the websites that you can search. And then if you need LDS features, the first three are good options. And there are more programs than just these four. These are just the four that we see the most often and that are very popular. Okay, tell us about what kind of car this one is.
So I have my oldest grandson, Nicole's little 8-year-old Jacob, loves cars. And last night at dinner I said, okay, Jacob, help me think of some cars that we can liken to family history programs. And so I said, what's a really fun car? One that's just kind of colorful and fun. And he thought for a minute, he said, a Jeep. I said, oh, that is perfect, because my sister has a yellow Jeep. He says they're cool because you can take the doors off and go off-roading. And I thought, okay, this reminds me of Roots Magic a little bit. Roots Magic is kind of colorful, it's fun, it has a more playful feel. So if you want something that seems really modern and fun and exciting, then Roots Magic might be one that you really like. I know lots of people that absolutely love that. And then I said, okay, now what's a car that's kind of smooth and it's maybe a little pricier, it has a lot more features, or it can really do lots of cool things. And he really didn't know about this one, but Nicole and I decided this would be more like the BMW. You know, this is a smooth ride, it's got cool features. And this is Legacy. Legacy can be a little bit more difficult to learn. They have user groups, but it's very, very powerful. And I know a lot of professional genealogists use it. A lot of people who are really wanting to keep track of a lot of things in their family tree love Legacy. So if you're looking for something that just seems a little bit more, that might be what you'd want to use.
They have a premium upgrade, so although the basic version is the same price, they do have some upgrades that make it pricier.
Yes, thank you. And then Ancestor Quest, this is the one that we use. And this one, you know, I asked Jacob, I said, okay, what's just like a nice normal car? It's not really fancy, but it works great. And he says, well, how about a Chrysler? Since that's what they have, a Chrysler van. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Or like my Chevy Suburban. You know, it doesn't have anything fancy, but man, is it reliable. It just gets you where you need to go. And that's what I think of Ancestral Quest. Ancestral Quest is a lot like Personal Ancestral File. It's written by the same person. Develop both of them. So if you like Personal Ancestral File, you want something that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward and easy, then Ancestral Quest is one that you might want to try out. And then last, we have the priciest version. So I asked Jacob, what's a really pricey car? You know, what's your favorite? And he's like, oh, Tesla. You know, so luckily this one, Family TreeMaker, is not going to cost as much as a Tesla, but it is a little pricier, and I have used it. I had a client that wanted everything printed out, beautiful charts, and so I used Family TreeMaker because I could do some really cool things with it because of that reason. So you can go online and get online reviews. There's people that have written blog posts about all these and get a lot of information. So just wanted to kind of whet your appetite for thinking about programs.
Okay. Well, hopefully you guys can try some free trials. So the next step, after you have sorted your papers and then chosen a software program to put all of your information that you have into, you need to begin an electronic filing system because you're going to want to scan all your documents. But how are you going to save them? You need to start a file structure, and then you need to make sure those files are backed up to multiple places and not just your floppy disk or your flash drive. Not that we even use those anymore, floppy disks. So we recommend having an external hard drive as well as a cloud backup system. And this is ensuring that all of your data on your computer, if it crashes, will not be lost. One that we use for backup, and there's many options out there, but the one we like is Google Bakcup and Sync. It works with Google Drive, and you can save everything from your hard drive to the cloud easily just by downloading this program and then choosing which folders you want to back up. And then it does it in the background. And you can pay for additional space, or you can just start with the free plan, which is 15 gigabytes for free. And there is a workaround. If you want to get more free space, you can copy and paste your documents into a Google Doc, which is for free. So you can store unlimited numbers of Google documents in Google Drive without taking up space. So if you're wanting to do a frugal way, just talk to us and we'll help you do that. But we love using Google Drive. It has a lot of really great tools that genealogists need. And let me share one. It's being able to add one document to multiple people's files. So Diana's going to tell us about her file structure in a minute, but I just wanted to mention this here, that if you have a census record that mentions 5 different people and you have file folders for all those people on your computer, do you have to copy that census document into each folder? Well, with Google Drive, you don't have to. It's a wonderful way to add one file to multiple folders. So you have to use this shortcut, Shift-Z, on your keyboard. And then that file can be added to both folders for 2 people or multiple people. So that folder just points to the file and doesn't take up a bunch of extra space. So if you want more help on using Google Drive, let me know. I'll be teaching about that at Roots Tech if you are going to Roots Tech. So the same file is now in both folders. So this is really useful for us genealogists. Another option for backing up your files is Dropbox. And this is just another great tool. There's other ones like Forever and Backblaze. You just need to do some research, kind of like the personal software program for family trees, and just decide which way you're going to use to back up your files. All right, so now that you've got a system to back them up, how do you actually organize them? How do you make your files? How do you do your folders? We talk about this a lot.
So before I tell you about folders, I just have to tell you my experience about a computer dying. So a year and a half ago, I was using my son's really great gaming laptop. He let me have that to use, and I loved it. And I was taking it to speak at a BYU conference the next day, and I plugged in my little jump drive. I have a little jump drive to my clicker. And it had kind of had some problems in the past, but I was like, oh, I'm sure it's fine. I plugged it in, it literally went poof. It fried the computer. We never got that back. Can you imagine? And the next day I am doing like 5 presentations during that week. Well, luckily I had all of my presentations on Google Drive. I didn't lose a thing. It was such a blessing. Everything was saved on the cloud. And so your computer literally can go poof. And I can testify to that. You can have a little explosion and then you get nothing back. And I had Nicole's husband Lance there, who's like amazing with electronics. He's an electrical engineer. He couldn't get it back. So, you know, it is what it is. But
don't use broken flash drives.
Don't use anything that looks bad, because it will go bad. Now, organizing computer files. This is how I do it. So remember at the beginning when I said that you do what works with your brain. I know lots of people have different ways of doing this, but I'm just going to show you what I do, and then you can go home and play with it and think about what you need and how it might work for you. So I have a file for each surname, and then within my surname folders, I have subfolders for individuals with that surname, and I use maiden names for women. Our women did not always use the same surname, right? It drives us crazy in the records because sometimes they get married several times, and we don't want to have folders for all their different marriages. So I just use maiden names for the women, and let's go to the next screen. I'll show you what this looks like. Oh, so each person, like Nicole was talking about, mentioned in the document, gets a copy of the document in their folder. And using the Shift-Z method on Google Drive is a great way to do that. Until Nicole showed me that, I was copying and pasting it into each person's folder, taking up space. So this is an example. Royston is one of my main surnames. I do my surnames in all caps because then it tells me it's a surname. Then I do a comma, and then I do the given name. So I have Robert Sisney. I had to start adding where they were born and a place because I have people with the same names. Let's go to the next slide. So you'll notice here's a bunch of Roystons, and at the very bottom, I know it's kind of hard for you guys to see, but I have 3 Charles Roystons and 2 that are Charles Baldwin, and they were father-son. So that's why I started putting in the birth and place. Plus, it just helps me remember who these people are. Now you'll notice I have got Adeline Royston at the top. She is a daughter of my mainline guy, and so she's in there with her maiden name. And then you'll see that I have some other women that are collateral women. So Belle Smith married Charles Baldwin Royston. He is not my mainline ancestor. He is the son of a mainline ancestor. And so I'm not going to research Belle Smith a lot. I'm not going to do a folder for her, a Smith folder just for her. So I just include her records within Charles Baldwin, so as a couple. Now that's how I have chosen to do it. I've seen other people that do things a little bit different because it makes more sense to them. So just know that this is giving you an idea, and then you can go forward and think about how it works best with your family and your brain. It's really important to think of a naming protocol for your documents. Whenever you scan a document, whenever you download a document, if you have the same protocol, then when you put that into your folder, you can see really easily what you have. So what I do is I do the date first. So in my example here, I've got 1850. Then it's the census. I do the record type. So it could have been a marriage record. It could have been a pension record, whatever record it is. Then the name of the individual it references. Then the place. And so what this does is when I put that in, it lines up. It's like a virtual timeline in my folder because it lines up by date. And I love that because I can look through it to see what I'm missing. If I've got all the censuses, it really shows me what I have for my people by date. And so one thing that you can do is use the hyphen and the underscore to separate information. And that will keep, when you share those files, that'll keep it from the computer adding a bunch of things, because if there's spaces, sometimes that will add a bunch of zeros. Do you ever get things shared with you and the file name has a bunch of gobbledygook in it? It's because the computer doesn't like spaces and it likes to have things filled up. So if you do that, it will keep your naming protocol intact.
How do you remember your protocol? Because what if I'm sitting down to do this and I can't remember, did I have the date first or the record or what's next?
Well, when I first started doing this, I wrote it out. And I put it in front of my computer because you do forget. And when I first started, I would think, oh, wait, is it the name and then the date? So yes, until you do it a bunch. So I highly recommend figuring out what you're going to do. Make yourself a little sticky note, put it right in front of your computer, and that will really help. Once you've done it a few times, your brain will get used to it and it gets really fast. So you will need to rename images as soon as you download them. Because have you ever downloaded like 5 images and then you look on your computer and of course you get your download from Family Search or Ancestry, whatever, it's like 035, it's like it has no sense. So what I do as soon as I download, I go straight to my download folder, right click on it and do this protocol. I rename it immediately. It takes all of 15 seconds and then it's done. So it's kind of one of those things you have to discipline yourself. So here's an example for my ancestor Robert Sisney Royston, what his folder looks like, just a little sampling of it. You'll see that because I put the date first, everything lines up. So at the very beginning, how my computer sorts it shows a folder. So I have a folder of his land patent file, and then I have a document that's a timeline. So I put everything into their folders. Any research reports I've done on them, any timelines, my research log, everything I found goes into this folder for this person. And then you see all the documents, and they line up by date, so then I can really easily see. Now you might notice that he's got 2 1880 censuses, and yes, he was enumerated twice on the 1880 census. He had moved, and 2 weeks later, he's in a different place and gets to give his information again. So that's the subject for another class. If you come to my class on the census, you'll get more of that story. But it's kind of fun to compare and see the difference between the 2 censuses, and it's the same household. Gives you a little clue about what census records, how you have to look at those.
Why do you have it downloaded twice for each census? Did you have one from Ancestry and one from Family Search?
Actually, the ones on the right are because I was doing accreditation and I had to submit the papers with the source citation attached.
Oh, I see that.
So I had put the source citation, and that was a special document. So, yeah. Yep. Okay. Am I doing this one?
Yep.
Okay, paper filing. We still need to keep paper. So when you read those things where people say, get rid of all your paper, there are going to be files where you need to keep paper. And some of those are things that are archival. If you've got letters, okay, thanks for fixing my spelling error.
I think it was mine. I'm pretty sure I did that one.
Well, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Better now.
There are papers you want to keep. If you send away for a document, you paid $20 for a certificate, you want to keep that. I keep those. I scan them and put them in my stuff, but I keep those. And I've got letters. I was telling Nicole that I have letters from my grandfather that he wrote in 1915 to 1925 to his brother about purchasing land in Idaho, homesteading land. You better believe I'm going to keep those letters. They are scanned, but they've got to also be kept safe. Those are 100 years old now. I can't believe it.
We've got to show my kids that they're 100 years old. They'll love that.
So just think carefully. And people always say, well, I don't know if I'm going to want to keep this. It's okay to have an I don't know pile about keeping the stuff once it's scanned. You may need to hold on for it a little bit and really think about it. So, this is important stuff. You don't need to be too hasty in throwing away stuff. Okay, this is your choice, how you keep your stuff. Who's the file person here? Who's the binder person? See, it's half and half. People love what they love, and that's okay. So what doesn't matter what you do, files or binders, but make sure you're using archival plastic sleeves or archival paper folders. And I don't need to tell you where to go to get those, because you just Google that online, and there's so many companies out there producing archival quality things. It's a great day to be doing this because we can do so much research and shopping online. So you need to choose a system for your papers, though. It's not okay just to shove them in a file folder and then not have a system with it. So here again, it's kind of what you like. And I know people that have surnames. They know exactly how it works. I know others that do this family color thing. Grandma's red, grandpa's blue. That one didn't make sense to me, but I know people that love it, and it makes perfect sense to them. Then I have a friend who does numbering. All of her documents are there only by number, and that's in her program with number, and there's absolutely nothing else but numbers, and that works for her. And then I know people that do records, so they have all of maybe the Royston censuses are all together, or the Royston certificates are all together, and that makes perfect sense for them. So you might be wondering what I do. So when I went to that family history fair 16 years ago, I happened upon a class that made lots of sense for me, and it's surname location based, which is a little different. And it worked for me because I didn't always know who my people were. I'm looking in Oklahoma in 1920, and there's the entire county, it seems like, has Harrises in it. Which ones are mine and which ones aren't? So I use location. So I would have a surname folder, Harris, and then I would have Love County, Oklahoma, and all the Harrises who were in Love County, Oklahoma went into that folder, and I had a little, at the beginning of the folder, I had a little research log paper, and I'd write, number 1 is the 1910 census, and number 2 is a cemetery record, and so I had a little table of contents, and I still do that to this day. I love it. And so I do everything location-based with surnames. Also with my surnames, because there are things that are not location-based, like email correspondence or letters that you've written to people, I'll have a separate folder for that. So I'll have Harris email, or I'll have Harris family group sheets. So I have a few things like that, but most of my folders are location. So anyway, that has worked great for me. You guys have to figure out what's going to work for you.
All right, Mom. So you told us how you kind of got everything set up, but what did you actually do when you got to your pile of papers for the Harris family? What did you do with that stack? Like, what was the process?
Okay, so this is where it comes down to just one paper at a time. You have to just deal with one paper. So I would choose one paper, and I'd figure out what to do with it. So I'm going to show you an example. One of the papers that I had was a death certificate that my dad had ordered from New Mexico. This is for his grandmother, my great-grandmother. Oh, I think she's my second great, actually. Isabella Royston, or Isabella Weatherford Royston. And I had to figure out what to do with that death certificate. So what was the first thing I did? First, I had to look at it and figure out who this was. Because remember, I have a suitcase full of papers, and I don't really know this family tree very well. I knew just like my grandparents, but I didn't know anybody else in the family, so I had to try to figure out who this was about and what important information was in there. So on this death certificate, for genealogists, what's like one of the best things on a death certificate? It's the parents, right? That's where you get the name of the parents, and sometimes that's how you get your clues to go back. Well, on this one, we had surnames. We had Weatherford from Missouri and Klein from Missouri. And don't you love those question marks? That's literally what it has on the death certificate. Question mark, question mark. I love that. It's so funny. It's like, yeah, I wish you knew it too, because it would have really helped me. I've since pretty much figured out this family. But we want to really examine those documents. And one of the things that we teach in our classes is to go through your papers again. If you're stuck, go back through, because I guarantee you have missed some stuff along the way that now you know a little bit more is going to help you. So you're going to choose your one paper. You're going to really look at it. And then now we have online trees to help us. You can look up that person on Family Search or Ancestry and see what other people have found out about them. See if that paper that you are holding agrees with what is known out there. And you'll want to look at the relationships, the dates, places. We know that everything's not right on Family Search and on Ancestry trees. I mean, that's a given. We know that's not all right. But there is stuff that's good out there. There is stuff that is right. So we want to compare with what we have in front of us, our paper, with what's out there. So and remember, this is 16 years ago, so I didn't have Family Search or online trees. So I basically was building my own database. So my situation was a little different. But when I returned to the certificate years later, when I did want to get it on Family Search, then I looked to see if everything agreed. Is the death date the same on the certificate as on Family Search? And so you'll be doing that with your papers. You'll pick a paper, you'll see what it is, you'll go look online. Is it the same? How does this all work? Maybe you have better information. Maybe you just discovered a certificate that nobody else has that corrects a birth date or a death date. And so that's when it gets really exciting, when you see that you've got the answer. Now you have picked out your paper, so I had my death certificate, I scanned it in, I looked on Family Search, nobody else had scanned in and had put that on there. The death dates matched, everything worked okay. Now I needed to decide what to do with that paper. So remember where I said you can maybe put it in a pile for thinking about later? Well, that's if you're going to archive it and put it in your paper files. You really do need to decide what to do. So try to make a decision at the time. Think, okay, I do want to keep the certificate, it's going in the folder. Or this is just a scrap piece of paper my dad wrote notes on, it's going in the trash. And I had plenty of those because he had taken a lot of random notes that I had no idea what they were or what they could have anything to do with.
Like call numbers and things like
that. Yes. So it's okay to throw things away. And a lot of people are really afraid to throw away things with their genealogy. But it is okay. Okay, so once we have located that document online, here's an example of something you can throw away. Census records. They're everywhere, right? You can get those on so many different databases. So why keep all the census records? There really isn't a reason unless it's something incredibly special that you just want to keep in your paper. I do know people that like to keep them, but for me, they're really small. They're hard to read. I'd much rather look at it on my computer where I can blow it up and look at it more carefully. Another thing that everyone really struggles with are those family group sheets and pedigree charts. Because sometimes you just don't know what to do. You don't want to throw them away. But back in the day, remember where people would go photocopy those and assemble books for everybody in the family? So my mom would do that. She would think, okay, I've got 15 grandchildren. I'm going to make 15 copies of this pedigree chart so that I can assemble 15 books for them. Do I need to keep 15 copies of the family group sheet? No, because we're not doing that anymore. We're not making those book of remembrances that way anymore. So those can all go in the recycle bin, and that's perfect. But you might have a case where you want to keep one. So my favorite example of this is going through, this was my mom's stuff on this example, and she has ancestors from England. Going through her things, I found a handwritten family group sheet. And there had been some discrepancy on Family Search about one of the sisters. Is she Hester or is she Esther? There were twin girls, Harriet, Hester, and then an unknown. They were triplets.
Are they triplets or twins?
Triplets.
And what are their names?
They are actually triplets, but the third baby died. So they were always known as the London twins. They were identical, Harriet and Hester. Well, Family Search had two separate people. They had an Esther with an E, a Hester with an H, and Harriet. So they were trying to make out that Hester and Esther were two different people. I knew they weren't. I knew they weren't, but I couldn't figure out
because
why.
One of the babies died, right? One
Yes.
of the triplets died, so we knew that.
Right.
So we knew there were only two that lived to adulthood. And we thought, what's the difference with the Hester and Esther, right?
Right. And some of the records had Hester with an H, and some of the records had Esther with an E. So in looking at this family group sheet, somebody had written in red that because of her English accent, when Hester came to Utah, she always told everybody her name was Esther because she dropped the H. She was Esther. So her records in the United States have an E. Her records in England have an H. And it's the same person. So how great was that I saw that on the family group sheet, that somebody who wrote it in, I think it was maybe her granddaughter or great-granddaughter, I don't know who it was. But I kept that family group sheet because I thought that was such a fun little evidence of family lore, an explanation of the Hester Esther. So, long story short, if you have something special like that, it's great to keep that. That's something you can scan, share, but you can keep it.
Okay. So you've decided that you want to keep some of these papers. Well, why? It's because they can be used as evidence. Now she can take that family group sheet, upload it to Family Search, delete that extra person who was named Esther, and just say the name is Hester, this is the evidence, and use that paper as evidence. So we've got to scan it and then create a source with it. Did we skip this?
Oh, I kind of skipped that.
Oh, no, we didn't. We're just going to talk about that now.
I'll say it briefly.
We're going to tell you something very important. If you have a lot of documents or folders or journals that are of use to somebody else but not to you, or you don't have space, you can donate them. So consider donating some of your items that might be really, really special to a library or an archive or a genealogy society or a local historical society that might want to keep these items for you. One of our ancestors has a journal that's located at the BYU library in Utah, their special collections library, and that way all the descendants can access it. So if you have something that you don't want, but it is of genealogical value or historical value, don't throw it away, just give it to a library. So now we're going to talk about using your paper as evidence. So like we said, if that paper has information on it that's really important to proving a certain fact or relationship in your tree, it's important to share that and create a source on your family tree that you're sharing online, Family Search or Ancestry. But you can start by just creating a simple source in your own personal genealogy database. So this is a screenshot of Ancestry Quest. And when Mom created this, she was using Isabel Weatherford's death certificate. And so she went into Ancestry Quest and created a source that way. There's a little box that pops up that kind of guides you through creating your source and telling you what to put in it. Do you guys use the source citations on your programs? Raise your hand. Those are so helpful in knowing what to record about where you found the information. So if you're using a paper that's in your own files, then you are the repository. You're the person who holds the records, and you put in your own name and your address for that. So the source citation and notes for this death certificate were that she obtained it from the county, but that she holds a copy in her own records. Okay, so now let's talk about creating a source on Family Search. Raise your hand if you've done that. Great, so some of you have. So normally we just attach a source that Family Search already has, but if we are having our own papers, then we need to create a source that we upload. So you can upload your document as a photo, or you can add a story, or you can upload a document. So if you have a PDF or an image that's like a certificate or a paper, just go to the documents section and upload that. Then after you do that, you create a source citation. If it's a multi-page document, then you can scan it, all the pages, into one PDF. So that's really helpful too. So here's the PDF, which was a pension record for Isabel Royston. She applied for a pension because her husband fought in the Civil War. So the next thing you do is create a citation for that. And you put the citation right there next to the document. You can also add some information that's contained on the record by abstracting important dates and names and places. This was a multi-page document with a lot of things in it, so Diana took some of the things out of it that were important and put them into the notes. Then one person that's looking at it can see at a glance what this document contains without having to read through all 100 pages of the pension application. How many pages was it?
40.
40. I had a different pension application, or it was actually the Civil War pension of one of my husband's ancestors, and it was over 100 pages. So come to my class on Civil War records to learn about those. But you never know how long these could be. So you got to summarize them in the record details here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about one last thing in the last couple minutes we have, which is note-taking programs. But back to this. If you want to know more about how to do a citation and a source in Family Search, we have some links at the end of our syllabus for this class to our website where we go into more depth. Okay, all right, note-taking.
Okay, so you're going to discover in your papers that you've been keeping all the handouts from classes like today. And you're going to have maps that you downloaded that you just knew you were going to use again, and in my dad's case, he had a bunch of stuff like that. And this is good information. You don't want to throw away. You want to keep this stuff. So what can you do to make that more accessible? Well, I would organize it all in binders and had tabs, and I never looked at it because I just never did. So what I discovered was a really cool online program called Evernote. I started using that to put all of that stuff. So I'm basically making my own genealogy reference library. You can also use OneNote. I have OneNote, but I use it for a few different things. Evernote is where I keep all this stuff. So Evernote, if you don't know about it, it's free. There's a premium version also, which lets you just do more per month. But every month you get a restart and add more stuff. So you can do it free as long as you want. It's web-based, so it can be downloaded to your hard drive, but it can be on your phone, it can be everywhere. And it replaces all of those papers that you want to get rid of. So here's just an example of what you can do with it. Let's say that you take the syllabus right now today from this class on getting organized and you put it onto Evernote. And then you could do tags. You could say that was by Diana Elder, Nicole Dyer, and it was on Getting Organized. It was the Tucson Family History Fair. So that like a year later, you're like, oh, I went to this class and I had some ideas, and I know it was Tucson. You can, by using your tags, you can find that document. Getting Organized, you can find everything about that. So I love, it's like making your own little, it's great. It's great. So let's show you just an example of what an Evernote page looks like. And I have written 2 blog posts about this, so if you go to Family Locket and just do search for Evernote, you'll find a couple of in-depth blog posts about how to do this. And also in your syllabus, I've linked to a couple of Evernote posts by colleagues of ours that have written about how to use it. So on the left, you'll see that there's a list of all my notebooks. So you set up notebooks, and you can have as many notebooks as you want. So I have notebooks for Gulf South research. I have notebooks for United States research. I have one for all about genealogy. I mean, you just have fun creating your notebooks. And then, I think I have, if you just keep going, I've got some things, yeah. And then, next to the list of notebooks, you've got your individual notes, all the different notes within a notebook. And then on the far right, you actually have what the note is. In this case, I had found a newspaper article that I wanted to save. And so you can take screenshots. If you're out searching on the web and you find something you want to save, like a blog post, you can just do a direct click with a web clicker and it sends it straight to Evernote. It's really cool. Or you can do a screenshot. In this case, I did a screenshot of this newspaper article and I tagged it with Royston and newspapers and the year. So it's kind of the sky is the limit for what you can do. The key thing is that if you use something like this, you can get rid of all the papers that are your genealogical helps that you're really never going to look at again on paper. Having it digital and organized and tagged makes so much more sense to me because I actually use my stuff now. I can actually find it and I love it. So I know that probably in your stacks of papers you're going to have a goodly amount of that. So we just wanted to give you a few ideas. Like I say, this could be a whole class, so we don't have time to go into that. But we want to just give you a little snippet. There's something you can do with those kind of papers. Okay, so our final little thought here. Love this quote by Winnie the Pooh, AAM. Organizing is what you do before you do something so that when you do it, it's not all mixed up. So that's what you guys need to channel your inner Winnie the Pooh. And then Benjamin Franklin, for every minute spent organizing, an hour is earned. The more you organize, oh my goodness, it's going to be so much better. So thank you so much for being here. We hope that you've learned something and have a wonderful day today.
Thank you for listening to Research Like a Pro with Diana Elder, accredited genealogy professional, and Nicole Dyer. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your own genealogy research. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or visit our website, familylocket.com, to contact us. You can find our book, Research Like a Pro, A Genealogist's Guide, on Amazon.com and other booksellers. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.